Yes, that's Mario still.
All right. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. So my topic is on the history of video console game wars. As you see here, got Mario, Sonic, Kratos from God of War, and Master Chief from Halo. Quick show of hands. How many of you guys in here? How many of you guys in here play video games? All right. Okay. Who's Team Xbox? Team PlayStation?
Wow.
You guys are wrong.
Team Nintendo? Anybody?
Now who's that?
Last but certainly not least, PC Master Race people.
Master Race. You
All
are
right.
wrong as well.
So, how does this work? Oh,
There you go.
so, get ready for the next battle. That's how we're gonna start this. Yeah. So, console wars was literally, all right, well, people. Excuse my. So the console wars, it pushed the boundaries of like what games could do, and it also pressed people's friendship limits. You know, some people are like, oh, Team Sonic. So, but like I'm gonna say the one thing that started the whole started was the console wars between Nintendo and Sega. That was the magic and bird of like the console wars. And then later on, like Sony and Microsoft, that would become the Jordan and LeBron. Y'all can take that as y'all may. These clashes, like it revolutionized like the brand loyalty and how like what people were doing. It pushed it to unprecedented heights, which would go to my original point. If it wasn't for the console wars of like the 90s or late 80s, early 90s, gaming wouldn't be as big as where it is now. So I'm going to my first point, which is round one, Sega versus Nintendo. So about 1983, roughly, Nintendo created the Famicom. In 1985, when it came over here, it became renamed as the Nintendo. And around this, about 85, around this time, so I said it revived the video game market after the 1983 video game market crash. According to Wikipedia, it sold 62 million units overall, like 34, I think, in North America. And so yeah, games like for Nintendo's games were such as like Mario, Duck Hunt, Tecmo Bowl, Mike Tyson, SpongeBob, et cetera, et cetera. Until about 1988, Sega came out with the Hyperdrive, or what we know it as the Genesis. And according to the book Console Wars, which was written by Blake Harris, the bigwigs at Sony, or not Sony, I'm so sorry. The bigwigs at Sega they marketed the Sega to be the edgy counterculture compared to Nintendo's family-friendly gaming. And they had games such as Sonic the Hedgehog, Echo the Dolphin, Streets of Rage, Michael Jackson's Moonwalker, my personal favorite, and Altered Beast. They used the 16-bit thing as opposed to Nintendo's 8-bit. And then once this happened, Nintendo started to realize that Sega was putting belt to ass, excuse my French. And so they came out with the Super Nintendo, which used 16-bit as well, but they tried to use like a bit of a 3D thing, i.e. if you play like Pilot Wings, that'd be kind of like my best example for that. And the most notable games for Super Nintendo was like Super Mario World, Legend of Zelda, Link to the Past, my favorite Super Nintendo game of all time, Donkey Kong Country, Super Metroid, and so forth, so forth. So that's when, like I said, Nintendo started to, all right, so about 95, I would say, roughly, that's when Sega like kicked down the door. Wait, I missed something. All right, before that, I'm sorry. I had a point, but anyway, well, so Sony in '95 created the PlayStation, which kicked, which kind of sliced through both Nintendo and Sega's sales, which effectively ended the console wars between Nintendo and Sega, which gives me to round two, Microsoft versus Sony. And you got rid of, when Sony coming into the game, that got rid of the 8-bit cartridges and gave us the CD-ROMs. But let me also put a note before that. Sega actually had the Sega CD and the Sega Saturn, which also used CD-ROMs, but I say Sony, I guess what made it was more of the popular one. And Sony's games included like Tekken, Crash Bandicoot, Twisted Metal, Final Fantasy VII. And around 2001 is when Microsoft came out with the Xbox. And I know most of you guys know like Halo, Forza Motorsport, Ninja Gaiden, Dead or Alive 3. And that was, and then I guess the aftermath would have been the conclusion. Sega left in 2001 to focus more on the video game side of things. Nintendo's still there, i.e. the Switch, GameCube, whatever. So, but they're kind of like in their own little lane. It's like, so the war is still on, but it's not really the same as it used to be. Like PC gamers and Steam, you guys know y'all bridged the gap between the console gamers and stuff. Like y'all made it to where everybody can play the same games. Kind of, like the only person that kind of really can't say, oh, sorry. But the quote I'm gonna use to end here is from Jacob Ferrudo of Prospect.org. Maybe the end of this console wars can shift developers into making better games as opposed to just really good hardware. But like I said, the console wars today has nothing on what we went through like the early 80s and 90s. Thank you.